There's a dark psychology secret that makes people become completely obsessed with you, and it's so simple that when I tell you what it is, you're going to be shocked that you never noticed it before. This technique is used by cult leaders, master manipulators, and the most magnetic people you know, and they never talk about it because it gives them way too much power over others. Most people think being likable is about being nice, agreeable, and always available, but that's exactly backwards. The people who have others wrapped around their finger use the complete opposite approach. And it's based on a psychological principle that's so powerful, it can literally rewire someone's brain to crave your attention. I'm going to show you exactly how this works, why it's so effective, and how you can use it ethically to become the person everyone wants to be around. But I'm warning you right now, once you understand this, you'll see it everywhere, and you'll never look at human relationships the same way again. Plus, I'm going to share a story about how I accidentally discovered this secret that will completely change how you think about attraction. Here's the thing that nobody wants to admit. Most of us are way too available, way too eager to please, and way too predictable. We think that if we're always there for people, always saying yes, always being supportive, they'll like us more. But what actually happens is the complete opposite. When you're always available, you become background noise in someone's life. You're like the friend they know they can call anytime, so they never feel any urgency to actually call you. You become safe, reliable, and boring. And boring people don't create obsession, they create indifference. Think about the last time you were really interested in someone. I'm talking about that person who occupied your thoughts, who you couldn't wait to hear from, who made your heart race when you saw their name pop up on your phone. Were they always available to you? Were they always predictable? Were they always giving you exactly what you wanted when you wanted it? I'm willing to bet the answer is no. I'm betting they were a little mysterious, a little unpredictable, maybe even a little frustrating at times. They probably left you wanting more, wondering what they were thinking, trying to figure out how to get their attention. And here's the crazy part. We all know this from our own experience, but we still make the same mistake over and over again. We still think that being more available, more predictable, more accommodating will make people like us more. We still chase people who don't seem that interested in us while ignoring the people who are always there for us. This happens because most people don't understand how human psychology actually works. They don't realize that our brains are wired to value things that are scarce and to take for granted things that are abundant. They don't understand that uncertainty creates more powerful emotions than certainty ever could. But here's where it gets even worse. When you're always available and predictable, you're not just failing to create attraction, you're actively destroying any interest that might have existed. You're training people to take you for granted. You're teaching them that your time and attention have no value because they can get it any time they want. And the most painful part is that this approach often comes from a genuine care and kindness. You're always there for people because you want to help them, because you value the relationship, because you're a good person. But your good intentions are backfiring in the worst possible way. But there's something I haven't told you yet about why this pattern is so hard to break. And it has to do with a story that happened to me in college that opened my eyes to how backwards I had everything. So, what's this dark psychology secret that changes everything? It's called intermittent reinforcement, and it's the same psychological principle that makes gambling so addictive, that keeps people scrolling social media for hours, and that creates some of the strongest psychological bonds known to science. Here's how it works. Instead of giving someone consistent, predictable responses, you give them variable, unpredictable ones. Sometimes you respond quickly. Sometimes you take a while. Sometimes you're super engaged and enthusiastic. Sometimes you're more reserved. Sometimes you're available. Sometimes you're busy with other things. This creates what psychologists call a variable reward schedule. And it's the most powerful way to create behavioral addiction that exists. When someone doesn't know what kind of response they're going to get from you, their brain starts obsessing over figuring it out. Let me explain why this works on such a deep level using a metaphor that will make this crystal clear. Imagine your attention is like a vending machine. Most people operate like a broken vending machine that gives out snacks every single time someone puts in a quarter. People get their snack, they're satisfied for a moment, but then they forget about the vending machine because they know exactly what to expect. But intermittent reinforcement is like a vending machine that works sometimes and doesn't work other times. Sometimes you put in a quarter and get a snack. Sometimes you put in a quarter and nothing happens. Sometimes you put in a quarter and get 2 snacks. This unpredictability makes people obsessed with that vending machine. They keep coming back, they keep thinking about it, they keep trying to figure out the pattern. Our brains release dopamine not when we get a reward, but when we anticipate getting a reward. And the uncertainty about whether we'll get the reward makes the dopamine hit even stronger. It's why slot machines are so addictive. You never know when you're going to win, so your brain gets flooded with dopamine every time you pull that lever. When you apply this to relationships, something fascinating happens. Instead of people getting used to your consistent behavior and taking it for granted, they start paying closer attention to you. They start analyzing your responses, trying to predict your moods, figuring out how to get the best version of you to show up. But here's the key. This isn't about being mean or manipulative. It's about being authentically human instead of trying to be a people-pleasing robot. Real humans have moods. Real humans have busy days and free days. Real humans are sometimes in the mood to chat and sometimes prefer to be alone. Real humans have their own lives, interests, and priorities. The problem is most people suppress their natural variability because they think it will make them less likable. They try to be consistently available, consistently positive, consistently accommodating. But this artificial consistency makes them boring and forgettable. Confident people understand this intuitively. They don't try to be the same person in every interaction. They let their natural personality shine through, which includes being sometimes more engaged and sometimes less engaged, sometimes more available and sometimes less available. Let me give you some specific examples of how this looks in real life. Instead of always texting back immediately, sometimes you respond right away because you're free and in a good mood. And sometimes you respond hours later because you were genuinely busy or focused on something else. The key is that your response time is based on your actual life and mood, not on some rule you made up about always responding quickly. Instead of always agreeing with everything someone says, sometimes you enthusiastically agree when you genuinely feel that way, and sometimes you respectfully disagree or offer a different perspective when that's more authentic. This keeps people guessing about what you'll say next, which makes conversations with you more interesting and engaging. But here's where most people mess this up. They think intermittent reinforcement means being randomly hot and cold, or playing hard to get, or being deliberately difficult. That's not what this is about at all. That kind of behavior is manipulative and creates toxic relationships. Real intermittent reinforcement is about being genuinely variable because you're a complex human being with your own life, moods, and priorities. It's about not trying to manage other people's emotions by being artificially consistent. It's about letting people see the real you, which naturally includes some unpredictability. The most magnetic people I know don't try to control how others perceive them. They don't try to be the same person in every situation. They let their authentic personality shine through, and that authenticity includes natural variability in their energy, availability, and engagement levels. This creates something psychologists call the uncertainty effect. When people can't completely predict your behavior, they pay more attention to you. They become more invested in figuring you out. They start thinking about you more often because their brain is trying to solve the puzzle of who you are and how you'll respond in different situations. And here's the really interesting part. This uncertainty actually makes people trust you more, not less. When someone is artificially consistent, we subconsciously sense that they're managing their image. We feel like we're not seeing the real person. But when someone shows natural variability, we feel like we're getting to know the authentic person behind the social mask. Think about the people you find most interesting and compelling. I bet they're not the ones who are exactly the same in every interaction. They're probably the ones who surprise you sometimes, who show different sides of their personality in different situations, who keep you guessing about what they'll say or do next. This is why mysterious people are so attractive. It's not that they're withholding information to be manipulative, it's that they don't feel the need to explain everything about themselves immediately. They let people discover their personality gradually, which creates ongoing interest and curiosity. But wait until you hear about the time I accidentally used this principle on my college crush, and the results were so shocking that it changed how I understood attraction forever. But here's the moment when everything clicked for me about why this works so powerfully. And I have to be honest with you, I learned this the hard way through one of the most embarrassing situations of my life.
I was in college, completely obsessed with this girl in my psychology class. Let's call her Sarah. I did
everything wrong that I just told you not to do. I was always available, always eager to help with homework, always texting back immediately. I was basically a human golden retriever, and she treated me exactly like you'd expect, as a friendly acquaintance who was always there but never really interesting. Then something unexpected happened. I got really sick with the flu and couldn't check my phone for 3 days. When I finally recovered and looked at my messages, I had like 15 texts from Sarah. She was asking if I was okay, wondering where I was, wanting to know what happened to me. For the first time ever, she seemed genuinely interested in me. But here's the part that really messed with my head. When I got back to normal and started being my usual overly available self again, her interest disappeared almost immediately. It was like a switch had been flipped. She went back to treating me like background noise. That's when I realized that intermittent reinforcement doesn't just make people more interested in you, it actually changes how their brain processes their relationship with you. When someone gets consistent, predictable responses from you, their brain categorizes you as safe and stops paying close attention. You become part of the background of their life. But when your responses are variable and unpredictable, their brain has to stay alert and engaged to figure out the pattern. This means they start thinking about you more often, even when you're not around. They start analyzing your behavior, remembering details about your interactions, trying to predict what you'll do next. Without even realizing it, they become mentally invested in you in a way that doesn't happen with predictable people. I realized that my constant availability wasn't really about being nice or caring. It was about my own insecurity. I was so afraid of people not liking me that I was willing to sacrifice my own authenticity to try to control their feelings about me. The truth is, being artificially consistent and always available is actually a form of people-pleasing that comes from fear, not confidence. When you're truly confident, you don't need to manage other people's emotions. You trust that the right people will appreciate you for who you really are, including your moods, your boundaries, and your natural variability. I started experimenting with being more authentic about my actual energy levels and availability. Instead of always saying yes to social invitations, I started only saying yes when I genuinely felt like being social. Instead of always responding to messages immediately, I responded when I actually had something meaningful to say. The change was dramatic. People started reaching out to me more often. They started asking what I was up to, wanting to know about my other activities and interests. They became more curious about my opinions and perspectives. And most importantly, when I was available and engaged, they appreciated it more because they knew it wasn't guaranteed. But the real breakthrough was understanding that this isn't about manipulation, it's about authenticity. When you stop trying to manage other people's emotions by being artificially consistent, you become more interesting because you become more real. The most confident and magnetic people understand this at a deep level. They know that trying to be everything to everyone makes you nothing to anyone. They know that having boundaries, moods, and preferences doesn't make them less likable, it makes them more human and therefore more compelling. This is why playing hard to get sometimes works, but not for the reasons people think. It's not about withholding attention to be manipulative. It's about having your own life, interests, and priorities that sometimes take precedence over any one relationship. And that independence is incredibly attractive because it signals that you're a complete person on your own, not someone who needs constant validation from others. But there's one more crucial piece to this puzzle that most people miss, and it's about the difference between healthy boundaries and toxic game playing. So here's what we've discovered about this dark psychology secret. The reason some people become absolutely magnetic while others get taken for granted isn't about being nicer or more accommodating. It's about understanding that human psychology is wired to value uncertainty and scarcity over predictability and abundance. Intermittent reinforcement works because it keeps people's brains engaged and curious instead of allowing them to categorize you as predictable and safe. When your responses are variable based on your authentic moods and availability, people pay more attention to you, think about you more often, and become more invested in figuring you out. But the key is that this has to be genuine, not manipulative. You're not playing games or withholding attention to be difficult. You're simply being an authentic human being with your own life, moods, and priorities instead of trying to be a people-pleasing robot who's always the same. The most magnetic and confident people know this at a deep level. They know that having boundaries, moods, and preferences doesn't make them less likable. It makes them more human and therefore more compelling. This is why confident people never chase anyone, but somehow always have people chasing them. They've learned to be fascinating by being real, variable, and authentically human instead of trying to be perfectly consistent and always available. The next time you feel the urge to be instantly available or completely predictable with someone, remember that you're accidentally training them to take you for granted. Instead, be authentic about your actual energy, availability, and interests, and watch how much more interesting you become to everyone around you. Remember, you're not a vending machine that has to give the same response every time someone puts in a quarter. You're a complex, multifaceted human being, and letting
letting people see that complexity is what makes you truly magnetic.